Hi, and welcome to the Happiest Hour. I'm Paula Devine, and today I am joined by a very good friend of mine, Shannon. Shannon, how are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the podcast. I am so excited you agreed to do this. You and I have known each other a very, very long time. And once again, our paths crossed when we joined this world of recovery and quitting alcohol. So I am super grateful for not only you, but for you to come on, share your story, what we have built in this group together, and how it's evolved. People do ask me all the time, what's the magic pill? And I really believe it's connection. And having a community makes recovery so much easier.
I agree.
So thanks for being here. And so, can you share with us what your relationship with alcohol was like and kind of how you evolved?
Sure. So I grew up, mother and father are still married. I have two sisters and a very happy childhood, very happy. My father is a recovered alcoholic, so it was always around, but he was never an active alcoholic. When I was growing up, he had quit before I was born. And so I knew he would go to meetings and, it didn't really mean much to me when I was younger. And then as I got older, just a sense of pride at that he had stuck to this and that I had a father that was so brave. So my own drinking is, it drank in high school a little bit, like everybody else. I went away for college in my freshman year. And then when I came back in my sophomore year, a little closer to home, I started bartending and was going to college as a sort of commuter student. And I think that's where my drinking sort of ramped up. We'd get off shift and then we'd go party at the bars around town. They have a term for it. It's called in the biz. So they give us, half price or no price drinks. I met my first husband when I was in my early 20s, and drinking was a big part of his life. He was much older than me, and I think there's always been some degree of insecurity, significant insecurity. I don't want to diminish that. It's always sort of been there. And any drinking that I did certainly was to be a part of, to fit in, to overcome my anxieties socially. You hear that all the time. That's was a fundamental truth for me. And then I think just being insecure in that relationship because he was so much older and because I was so in love and because it was not the healthiest relationship, I think I just drank to keep up. And then it became, an addiction. I drank for maintenance. And that continued for years, even after we were divorced. Wine is what I drank. So socially, wine is very acceptable. I mean, everybody that I hung out
Yeah.
with drank
Yeah.
wine. And we had kids, and the parents of those kids would drink wine. And we had very much a drinking social life on the boat. That's when I met you. We were
Yes.
all part of a big group of young parents who, like to let
Yeah,
loose.
yeah. Now, at any point from the time you met your husband until this time that we're talking about, our kids were at the same school. Was anyone ever pulling you aside and saying, "Hey, you might
No,
want to slow
never.
down on your drinking"?
No, never. When I was going through my divorce, there'd be a lot of name calling. You're an alcoholic. You're an alcoholic. The
Right.
truth is we were both alcoholics, but nobody that I cared about who would, I would be upset if they judged me at
Uh,
all. But then the voice in my own head, I started recognizing that sober October or dry January was not easy. And
It's so true. You think like, "Oh, I got that." And then
yeah,
you go to do it and you're like, "Wait, I can't really
why?
do." Like, that's why nobody's pulling us aside because nothing bad is happening.
Yep.
It's so normalized. Everybody's doing it. Who goes out on a boat with a bunch of parents and kids and doesn't drink?
Right. And the people that I knew that were not drinking, whether they were sober or just didn't drink, I knew who they were. I could spot them in a group because there were so few of them, and I thought, oh my God, live a life. You know, you must not be any fun.
Note to self, stay away from that boring
Yeah,
girl.
yeah, really. She must have a traumatic story. Ugh. Um, and because it was wine, and because they used to call me Sleepy Shannon because I'd pass out after 4 or 5 glasses of wine. Like I was never one to be able to drink a ton. But then I started to recognize that I can't remember the last day I didn't drink. So then you start to say, let me just see if I can't drink during the week. And I get through a couple days, convince myself that, I had this completely under control. and then cheat, start on Thursday or whatever.
Oh, yeah, Thursday.
But in my head, I knew you have lost control of this, whether you want to admit it or not. You can point to 3, 4 glasses and, you're not embarrassing yourself at work. Or so I'm in an industry where I network with people. It's not sales, it's something similar. But we're really focused on active listening and not talking about yourself and sort of engaging people. And the best way to engage people is to let them talk about themselves. So I was really learned in doing that. And then what I noticed was in the morning the next day, I'd look back at the night, and from what I can remember, I broke all those rules. I didn't listen to people when they spoke. I was quick to come up with my story that I could say. I was a real chatterbox and real self-involved, just the absolute personality type I disliked in other people. And I thought, oh God, you're so irritating to be around and such an egomaniac, and control yourself next time. But you'd never know when you'd cross the line and start behaving in a way that was shameful.
Was there a point too where you were like, "Oh, it's their fault. Like, it's because the event," or "I'm stressed out," or "I shouldn't have gone to that party." Like, it's always somebody else's fault or the event's fault. Did you find yourself doing that probably once you got clear,
No,
you
not
could see that.
really. Yeah, like I was always pretty self-aware. It was, for me, the practiced habit was not looking at it, right? So, or allowing somebody to convince me it wasn't that
Mm.
bad. I didn't ever blame other people. In the quiet of my head, I knew I had a problem. I lived in terror about when I'd get a DUI. I drank and drove a lot. I'd live in terror for when it was going out because the type of job I have, I can drink at work. I go to social events, take people to dinner, galas, all those things. And my tell was about after 2 or 3 drinks, I'd start to sound like I had marbles in my mouth. That was the first thing. So I lived in fear that, I'd be talking to somebody really important and I was not articulating myself well,
Yeah.
and it was going to get out. Like my little secret was going to get out. And it came very close to that several times. And then, I remember waking up in the morning and turning to my second husband, my now husband, and saying, was I really gross last night? Like, was I really being embarrassing? I feel like I really talked on and on about myself. And he was so conditioned to say, no, everyone was drunk. You know what I mean? And he knew that that's what I needed to hear. So then I convinced myself, all right,
I had
so it
this
wasn't that bad.
conversation with somebody yesterday about our husbands not really saying much, like, "Oh, you're fine, just cut back," or
Hmm.
You weren't that bad," or "Oh, you should have seen so and so." You know?
Exactly.
It's like subconsciously they're trying to protect us and they want us to be happy and they see and we tell them we need our drinks, they make us happy. Let's go out for drink, like all the things around it. And I think subconsciously they're trying to protect us. We're telling them that this is our fun, so
Hmm.
they don't want to let us down. But yeah, that's interesting that he would say that. Like,
Yep.
it's fine.
It's
It's
fine. He
it's
always
fine.
did that, and
Everything's fine.
so I would call one of my sisters or somebody I was with, a girlfriend, and I'd ask them, but I'd always call the person that I knew would give me the answer I wanted to hear. And you
Seeking the answer
yes,
unconsciously.
not wanting to
I
look
would
at it.
never call anybody. I didn't wanna hear it. I didn't
Oh,
wanna hear the truth. It's like,
well, you weren't calling the right people, you were calling your honest friends. So you asked me if anyone would point it out. My daughter started kind of pointing out that she would before we'd go out as a social group, um,
how old was she?
probably 13, 14. She had gotten into a golf cart accident where she and a bunch of friends were on a golf cart and they flipped it and she got real hurt. It dragged her along the street. And so she kind of had like PTSD from that. So we have a golf cart and she was very, very conscientious about who was driving the golf cart. She didn't want that to happen again. And she started looking around and we go out in these golf cart caravans, you remember? And she trusted no one to drive the golf cart because everyone was drinking, and
Had she been in the cart with an adult who was drinking?
thing actually to do with alcohol, it was
They
with
go hand
driving
in
in
hand.
general. Yeah, she was old enough to know that you can't drink and drive. Then she would say, "Can you just not drink so that somebody," and I was like, "No, I'm not driving the golf cart tonight. It's so and so is. I should be able to drink." And, I remember talking to my sisters and saying, "She's so judgy." But it was never, "Mom, I think you have a problem," ever. And my son would never say anything to me about it. She started to get really anxious around our friend groups and our social gatherings. And I'd say, "Why?" And she's like, "'Cause no one's in charge." And my daughter, who's, she's anxious, and probably because she was raised by alcoholics, actually, now that I'm putting that together right now in your podcast. Oh my God. I need to explore that. But she would come in and be like, "Can you please stop drinking so that, no one's paying attention to so and so and he's running around the pool and I don't want to have to be in charge." And I realized that, like, she doesn't have a single sober person in her orbit that she can count on. I really meditated on that a lot more later, but in the moment, tell her not to worry and keep drinking. So,
Yeah, I mean, our job as parents is to keep them safe,
yeah.
not just physically safe, but emotionally safe. And looking back, I remember starting to notice that my daughter was planning her entire weekends out of the house. She was young. I mean, she must have been in, like, I want to say, like, 7th grade, and she'd come home on a Friday and be like, "Okay, well, I have plans to go to Sophia's house Saturday morning. I'm staying the night at so and so's house." Like, and I'm like, "Is she avoiding being home?"
That occurred to you as a
Yes.
as a possibility?
Yeah.
Wow.
Is she avoiding being home? Like, the awareness was starting. Like, your awareness seemed like you had more awareness earlier on than I did. The awareness was starting around that time when they were in middle school and the comments were flying, and then she just didn't even wanna be home. Like, she's just avoiding the house because
Did you
that's
ever
probably
ask her about it and she gave you the honest
I
answer?
think I didn't wanna hear the answer,
Yeah.
but I was noticing the pattern,
Mhm.
and I'm like, and then she started also becoming very anxious about certain things.
And I look back at that now and I feel, ooh, and just such guilt, because if there was one thing I prided myself on, it was that I was real good mom,
Mhm.
real attentive. You and I have talked about this, involved in everything, planned the best parties. They wanted for nothing. And look at all these things I'm doing and taking these kids on all these vacations. And so proud of and can point to everything that these children had and how attentive and engaged I was as a mother. But, I'd still drive home from that family Sunday having, drank wine all afternoon with my two children in the car. And the thought of not doing that, I didn't look at. I mean, I
Yeah,
knew, but I didn't want to look at it.
it didn't seem feasible.
Mm-mm.
Like, why? Nobody got hurt.
Nobody got hurt.
Like, we're
Right.
checking all the boxes, the
Right.
fancy vacations, the cars, the golf carts, the private schools, the whole thing. Well, another thing that you and I totally connected on was that we didn't really have this dramatic rock bottom. You and I more or less experienced the gift of desperation,
Hmm. Yes.
and it is a gift
Yes.
because this is something that we never, ever saw in our future, anywhere in our orbit. And yet we have come to realize that this thing that we put on such a pedestal wasn't serving us anymore. So can you take us to the point where that kind of led you to where you realized that alcohol was no longer you were done?
Sure, sure. I knew I had a problem. I didn't know the terminology you learn in recovery programs about my life being unmanageable, but I knew that I am a control freak. It's something I'm working on, and I knew I had lost control of this. That quiet conversation was happening in my head. We talk about people being sober curious. I wasn't curious enough to listen to any podcasts or look at it directly. I didn't want to see it yet, but I knew. And it was Halloween night, 2023. And we were going on a golf cart caravan to a party where the kids were going to party in a big field and the parents were just going to orbit around and, drink. And my daughter said to me, "Please, can you stay sober tonight just in case, so and so doesn't gets too drunk?" And I said, "No, I'm not, this is my holiday as well. Like, my primary job isn't to take care of her." And so I just kept kind of blowing her off. I said, "I'm not even driving. Don't give me a hard time. Please just focus on your fun," and blah, blah, blah. So, while we dropped these kids off at a big, field party, and then we took ourselves to a restaurant and had some tequila. And I remember my son's girlfriend was a hostess, and I was, feeling happy and definitely buzzed, probably beyond buzzed. And I made a big deal about seeing her there and gave her a hug, pretending like we were best of friends. And I even took a video and sent it to my son. Long story short, we're done with this party. We caravan ourselves home, and I walk in the door to my house, and I walked to my son's room, and I saw so and so. She was hostessing. He's like, "I know, I got your video." And I said, "Oh, okay." He's like, "Are you drunk?" And my son had never asked me that ever. And the just immediate shame, he would go down in flames before he would point out something that like that. to mean just so I wouldn't be embarrassed, and also because he doesn't really talk a lot about feelings. So the fact that he said that, I said, "No, no, no, no. I wasn't driving," and, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward, I went to bed. Woke up the next morning, and just the shame just washed over me. And I opened my phone and I'm scrolling, waiting for my husband to wake up so I can ask him if I behaved well last night and
I'm sorry.
to be affirmed that I don't have a problem. And I saw, I don't know what it is, it must be God or a miracle, but because my algorithm wasn't such that I was looking at sober curious things, but all of a sudden I saw a picture from Sober Celebrities or something, and it was Josh Brolin, and he said sobriety is when your kids look at you and trust exactly what they see. And it was just like it flipped something in my brain. I mean, my brain just cracked, and I started crying. And I think it was a work day, actually. So I went to work, and that day on my lunch break, I went to the closest meeting that I could find. And it's probably the last meeting ever in the whole world that allows actual cigarette smoking in the meeting. So I'm walking in this meeting, and it's just a cloud of cigarette smoke. And I sat down and I just cried in the back for an hour. And that was it. That was the last day I drank. And I, to this day, don't know why it happened, and I just decided I'm going to try this and put one foot in front of the other, and did that for a few days. And then my son was playing baseball, and I was at a game, and I sat on the bleachers next to a friend of mine that I knew wasn't drinking. She didn't call herself sober, but she had stopped drinking. And I was eating candy because when you first quit drinking, and especially wine, you want sugar at all times. That hasn't gone away.
Yeah, I'm
And
still waiting for
I'm
that to
just
stop.
shoving.
Inhaling it.
I know. I think
Just
I had
last night, I'm like, "I'm going to Witt's Ice Cream." And John's like, "What?" I'm like, "Don't judge."
I know. I did too. Where did I go last night for ice cream? Oh, Chillin'. I went to Chillin'
Yeah,
for ice
yeah,
cream.
yeah.
Oh my God, so bad. But I was eating sour straws, like literally like dropping them in my mouth like a crazy person. And she's like, "What is with the sour straws?" I just said, "I stopped drinking." And she goes, "Come to this meeting. There's somebody I want you to meet. Come to this meeting."
Yeah.
And it was your meeting.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, she called me right before and said, "Okay, tell her to come on down."
Yeah.
And yeah, so you are one of the original members of the Happiest Hour,
Yes.
which started probably about less than a year when you came
Yes.
over, because I started it right when I stopped drinking. I was looking for community. I didn't know where I was going to find it. I didn't know if recovery meetings were going to work for me. And so I reached out to some women that you and I know and said, "Hey, do you guys want to get together every week? We'll start this group. We'll support each other. We'll start a chat." And then it just started growing. And then you came on and you were an amazing asset to the group. And so, yeah, so that's how.
That's sweet of you to say because your group has been more of a gift for me I mean, I talked to you about this, but I was going to recovery meetings every day, as you're supposed to when you stop drinking. And it was very helpful. Just the vulnerability in those rooms and how honest people were. But I didn't see a lot of people like me in those meetings. That's such an awful thing to say. Even as I say, you're not, we're all the same, right? It's
Sure.
the ultimate equalizer is alcohol. But men were coming up to me, old timers, they call them, were saying, beware because, you're fresh meat in these new groups. So, stick with women and all these things. And I thought, what is going on here? I was confused
Yeah.
at all times. So mostly I just sat in the back and either cried or kept my mouth shut.
Yeah.
So when our mutual friend asked me to come to this other closed women's group for people that were interested in not drinking, that's how she presented it to me. And she said, you were running this meeting and we weren't very close. We were in the same sort of circles, but not in the
Sure.
same, inner circle. So I was a little bit nervous to be vulnerable in front of you because I always kind of looked at you as, somebody that was like cool and very social. And I was nervous, but I walked into this meeting. I keep calling it a meeting. I'm going to call it gathering. And I walked into this gathering and I recognized like two or three faces in this group, and they were all moms. There's a few that I didn't recognize, but I recognized more than I didn't
Mm.
in this group of other mothers that I had seen because our kids went to school together. And it was like, oh my God, you
Yeah.
know?
Wow.
And just hearing from this group was, we talked a lot about being mothers and the shame we felt around our drinking needed that. And I
Mhm.
really think that if I had only gone to recovery meetings initially, I would have convinced myself that these folks, especially because I didn't have a low bottom, were on a different path than me.
Absolutely. I mean, when we start going to these meetings, they say, "Look for the similarities, not the differences. Take what you want, leave what you don't." But you do need to see people that have what you want. That is so important. Yes, maybe we can't relate to the guy that's, the old timer that's
Mhm.
whatever his story is. But seeing what somebody else has that you want
Mm.
is so essential recovery.
Yep.
And what was happening in the groups, which was great, was that a lot of the girls were going to meetings and getting what they wanted there, but there was still a gap of something else. And so we were doing that in the group, the gathering. We were able to talk about our kids and the struggles and the teenagers and the partying and the other moms and the social and how to go to out to a wedding, and then we could all help each other and support one another because we're great moms.
Right.
We're
Right.
doing all the things, and
Right.
yet there's still this piece that's getting in the way of being the best mom that we can be, because at the end of the day, that's all we want. Our life is
It
so
is.
short.
It is.
These kids are only with us for such a short amount of time. How much longer do you want to spend checking out and not being there 100%? Because they go off to college so quickly. And that kind of brings me into the next thing, was that you and I connected also. My kids are a little bit older than yours,
Mm.
not by much, only a year or two. And while trying to recover from this, started talking about, okay, well, now what's it like being an empty nester? What should I look forward to? You love it. I don't think I'm going to love it. I'm scared of it, so
Yeah.
we kind of bonded over that as well. And you're about to become an official empty nester
Yeah.
in a couple months.
Yes.
So tell me, what has life been like for you in these last 2 years?
Hmm. So, you sort of get over the dependency issue early, or at least I did. So it wasn't something I was like clawing at my throat about because I wanted the wine. And it was more how it impacted us socially. So we talked a lot about that. And then that kind of morphed into your son left for school. Actually, your daughter had left for school. And so that was one down. So you're spending more and more time with your husband. And then your son leaves. And I'm thinking to myself, what do you do with your spouse then? But that's why, in recovery, I think all of us, these women at your group, started because something woke us up and we were like, this is, we're not the parents we think we are. This is performative, what we're doing, all of these, volunteer things we're doing and the parties we throw, it's performative in terms of being present and, engaging truly and authentically with our children. We've been phoning that in.
Mm.
So I learned that here. And so that kept me sober for a long time. And I thought, oh my God, I've wasted so much time acting like a mother, like this, performance of being a good mother. And now look at this. I have 2 years left, now 1 year left. So, it was always sort of focused on being a mother. And what makes me nervous and what we talk a lot about now is that, okay, so the kids are gone now, and as they should be. They're studying and they're building their own life. When your priority isn't being the best mother, it doesn't, it's not so much in the forefront, what's going to keep you sober. And so, what I've learned from this group is to look at all the things that sobriety have given us. The ability to go out in the world and have dignity. You never have to worry about making a fool of yourself because you're inebriated. You somehow create these boundaries around yourself that because you're no longer hanging out with people where your commonality was drinking, you start recognizing the authenticity of friendships and perhaps, not the case with others.
Yeah.
So, we read this book together in our book. We started off as a book club. I have my fingers in quotes because I don't think we ever read our way through a whole book. We just talked too much. But one of the books was, and you told me to read it, We Are the Luckiest. And in that book, she goes through a number of things about, this is what it's like to be a mom and have to be sober. And she's like, unfortunately, this is your thing. And once you come to terms with that, your thing could be cancer that you can't cure.
Yeah.
Your thing could be overeating. Your thing could be whatever, being a kleptomaniac. Unfortunately, you're an alcoholic and it's your thing. And once you recognize that, and you'll realize how grateful you should be that this is your thing, because you can treat it and get over it and put your big girl pants on and get moving. And she talks a little bit about in the beginning of the book, somebody in sobriety told her, don't you want a simple little life? And she thought, no, that sounds awful. I want huge experiences, extreme highs. I want to crash when I feel low. I want to live life to the fullest. And by the end of the book, she's like, I'm so grateful for my simple little life. And that's how I feel. And I feel like every member of this women's group, especially when you're not focusing so much on the kids, is to finally put some priority towards and focus on the simple joys in life that you weren't paying attention to before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Shannon. I remember you coming to a meeting one night and you said, "Oh my gosh, I know this person's struggling with cancer, and I'm worried about this."
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh my god."
I know.
Like, yeah.
It's just liquid.
And in the
Like,
beginning when they say, "You give up are you gonna give up everything for this one thing?
yes.
Or you can give this one thing up for everything."
Yes.
And that was it right there.
Mhm.
And there's so much gratitude. And that is what keeps me sober today is gratitude. I mean, there's a lot of things that keep me sober today, but thank you for sharing that. That was amazing. So,
Well, I didn't want to come on this podcast at first, or I railed against it because I'm not open about this. It's not anything anyone in my sort of external circle knows that I'm not drinking or that I'm sober. But I thought about it after you asked me, and I thought I wouldn't be sober today if it weren't for this group. And you were very early in sobriety after a relapse, which you've talked about, and you brought these women together, and you say it's because you needed it. But I do think that there's something in you that wants to give service at your core. And I'm working at getting better at this, but I still have a tremendous amount of ego and pride. And I needed to see and connect with people that were like me. And that, the worst part of being sober was not being able to go to Bimini the same way we used to. Like, I needed to be that shallow, at least initially,
well,
until, you know,
well, I appreciate you
yeah.
being vulnerable and coming on here because I know how private you are about your sobriety. And many of the women in the group are very private about that. So I do respect that. I do understand that. I understand that not everybody is as vocal as I am about it. And I don't know what drove me to be so vocal about it. I
You're
think
just brave.
initially I just needed the accountability so bad because I felt like if I didn't put this out there that I could go back to that place. So I just had this extreme pull to be vocal about it. And it's funny, yesterday I was talking with a client of mine and she's like, "Why do you do this? Why do you help people? And why?" She was very curious why I'm doing this. And I said, it's funny, in the beginning, I did it for accountability. And then I started helping people. And then it felt really good to help people. You kind of get like this little helper's high, right? Like, oh,
Yes.
I'm helping people. This is so great. Look at me.
Mhm.
And then it kind of evolved into this, no, these women are really struggling. This isn't funny anymore. Like, women are out there convinced that we need this to do all the things. And then into an unhealthy relationship with alcohol where you really start to hate yourself. And to me,
Calling that
that is a calling
Mhm.
that's so much higher than I can comprehend. And I have found so much intention. It's given me a lot of purpose being an empty nester, and that I've been given this opportunity that my kids are away at college. They're healthy. My husband is super supportive. I've been given this opportunity to help people in a place where I never thought I could. And for all that, rather than this helper's high, I have gratitude.
That's amazing. So many people go through life believing that they're adding value, right? And maybe they are in small ways, but the service that you've chosen to do, and only because you're willing to put yourself out there and be vulnerable in front of people that are probably, whispering behind closed doors. I mean, there's a lot of that
Sure.
anywhere, you're actually, I don't want to go so far as to say saving lives. I mean, it sounds a little, I don't want to wax too
Yeah.
lyrical, but it
Maybe
saved mine, it really saved mine. Just because you decided initially to be accountable, that's how you chose to do it. I mean, that's a really brave way to be accountable.
it's scary as shit.
Yes, it must have been
I'm just going to
terrifying.
tell 500 people that I know on Instagram that I'm not drinking anymore. And like immediately, like everybody's going to think I'm an alcoholic.
Right.
So it's like, well, wait a second. Let's break that down for a minute. If that's what they want to think, that means nothing compared to the one woman that messaged me saying, you helped me, or even someone like you. This group is what I need to stay sober. Yes, I got sober in those recovery meetings. Yes, I got sober doing the 12 steps. Those are phenomenal. But this is what's keeping me sober.
Yeah. Most people wouldn't make that choice, though, Paula, is my point. Like that, it's not just a brave choice, whether you realize it or not. It's a very selfless choice because, the people that really should be paying attention to your message, gonna probably distance themselves from you, right? Because she has a problem. It's like why women don't want to hang out with divorced women, right? Like, oh, that's your problem. I don't see any of that going on for me. But that's a big deal
Yeah.
just to be able to help one person.
Yeah. Thank you. No,
Yeah.
and it did initially start out as like, I need this for me. And then it was like, oh, wait, this is definitely a higher calling for sure. And yes, it is a business. Now, it was not before. For 3.5 years. This was not a business until I decided that I wanted to step away from what I was doing and devote all my time to this. I don't make a lot of money doing this. I'm happy if I pay my rent and maybe, the pool guy.
Yes.
Don't tell my husband. He might make me go back to work.
He's like, do you need more throw pillows for your office?
He's like, don't buy another thing for that office.
I know, it is so comfortable and warm in here, though.
It is a
You've done
cozy.
a nice job.
It's a little scary when you come down the hallway, but then when you come in, you're like, oh,
Yes.
this is fun. Like,
Yes.
do you ever think about sleeping here?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
not yet, but I have a backup.
I love it. I love it. We live in South Florida. I think that has a lot to do with the cultivation of this
For sure.
FOMO feeling that we have to bat away. But in general, like, I think it makes, and you're certainly A type, I'm A type. We need to focus our energy on something, right? So like, we wouldn't be, I don't think we'd be as content to sit by a river and like sip our coffee all the time. I think you need somewhere to channel your energy. I recognize my own characteristics in that.
Yeah.
So, like right now, I'm looking at being an empty nester. My husband's there. I love it, but he's there half the time. I'm so excited about the things that we have planned to do. And I'm just like re-enrolled in graduate school. Because I was just telling you today, I'm thinking about getting a puppy, and you're like, do you need to do that? You got a lot going on. I'm happiest when vibrating a little bit. That's probably a character deficit that I need to look at, but I know myself and
That's
I
who
don't
we
like
are,
the
and we have to
quiet.
nurture that. And, I love that you're looking for other outlets as your daughter's getting ready to leave. And that's so important. And it's like, I had this vision that when my kids went away to college, I was like, woohoo, party on. We are going to party. This is going to be great. And it was almost like I was so not living in the present, looking forward to my kids leaving.
Oh, that's so hard to
Like, I hate that I'm
realize
even
that.
acknowledging that or admitting that
Yes.
so publicly, but you're so self-serving when you are in your drinking phase,
Yep.
addiction, whatever you want to call it, habitual.
Yes.
But now that I've done the work and I have the support and I have the community, I know that my kids, even though they're not around anymore, when they call me, they know what they're getting.
Yeah. Sobriety is when your kids look at you and trust just exactly what they see.
When my daughter's
here for
having a
it.
hard day or my son's struggling with something, they know they can pick up the phone and they're going to get me.
Right.
They're not going to get mom after 2 glasses.
Yes.
That's another reason I do this because it gives me so much purpose here, but that I'm actually living with so much intention.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I do every day is for the intention of being the best mother and being fully present.
Yep. And enjoying this simple little life. I mean, it's not simple. Your life isn't anything but simple as we sit around all this electronic equipment, but just to be, fully present. We use that term. It's become, ubiquitous with what you're doing. But the truth is, we were performing to some extent before. We weren't listening to people when they spoke. We weren't truly laughing at the thing our child did because of, I just feel like I was phoning it in to some extent. And now, without the alcohol, the joys are so much more acute. Do you notice that? Like, it's
Yes.
just so much more.
John and I were cracking
Pure.
up 2 nights ago about something. I was crying,
I
like
can't
just
picture that.
stupid stuff. But anyways, I laugh so much harder now than I ever did after a couple glasses.
Yeah.
and we're funnier and we're wittier because we're clear.
Yep. And we can show up for people more. And it's not just the canned answer to get off the phone, but the flip side of that is like when my son went off to school, I had a really hard time with that. We talked a lot about that in this group. I felt every piece of that. And I was like grateful for that feeling too, because that just reminds me of how much I love him and
Mm,
how much I enjoyed being around him. I recognized it was an unreasonable and sort of existential kind of thing I was going through, but I recognized it. I didn't
yeah,
shove it down. I didn't numb it out. And then the only way through these things around, past these things is to go through them. You can't shortcut
absolutely.
that stuff. And I'm as grateful for the joys as I am for the despair because at least I'm feeling it authentically.
That's amazing, Shannon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. I feel like we could probably sit here and talk all
I
day.
know, I know.
I mean,
Thanks
we
for asking
always
me to
do.
be on. I really
Yeah.
appreciate
Oh,
I've
I
enjoyed it.
appreciate you and these stories, although this podcast is very young, I have been getting messages that these stories are helping women.
That's
So
great.
I know that your story will resonate with someone or many women and that's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
Share the message that life is so much brighter on this side when we stop giving into this thing that's weighing us down,
It
right?
is. I mean, like, I know I could picture myself 5 years ago, like, rolling my eyes, like, you know what I mean? But I mean it. It really is, and
Yeah.
without exaggerating it at all, like, I I hope this is how I feel forever. I love it so much.
Mm, same.
Yeah.
All right.
Alright.
Well, I love you.
Thanks, Paul. I love you too.
Thank
Alright.
you.
Have a
Okay.
good day.
You
Bye.
too.